Welcome back to another what if scenario. And today, y'all, I'm kind of wondering, what if Rome and Carthage never went to war against each other, and as such, there was never even a Punic War that ever happened? Now, mind you, I had ideas of doing the 3rd century BC Roman military how-to videos for this, but unfortunately it's raining heavily outside and I don't know when I'm going to be able to do that. So, for right now, we will be doing a what if scenario of what if Rome and Carthage never went into the Punic Wars. So, strap in and let's get started. Now, when we honestly think of Europe in the time and history, most people mostly focus on Rome or the Macedonians, Carthage and such, Seleucids, and as well the Egyptians. However, most of our known world at the time kind of looked mostly like this: the Dacians to the north, the Celts to the north, as well as Germanic tribes that also lived in the north, but unfortunately not much information is on them. As well, the Iberians, also most of a mystery. There's also Thrace and various other regions, but unfortunately, as I said, it is very complex to actually talk about. But in such, most people don't realize is that when it came to the entirety of the fighting that actually started the Punic War, it actually started with the, small city-state of Messini, pretty much located here in northern Sicily. Now, most people are going to be asking, well, what's caused this? Simple. Both Rome and Carthage were asked to actually, protect the city. The thing is, Carthage first arrived, then came the said Romans. So, what if in this alternate timeline, Carthage just took control and pretty much Rome never did? This kind of actually did happen, so I'm just going to let, Carthage take the victor on this one. Kind of obvious, because one, they were already there, might as well. If you all want to actually see a full video on the Carthaginian Wars, or Punic Wars, however you want to pronounce it as, I will actually leave a link for none other than Armchair Historian's old video, which, we miss you, buddy. We're gonna miss you. But in such, I do have to actually put to the major points. 1. Carthage and Rome actually did like each other. A lot. And when I mean a lot, I mean a lot. To the point that 1, both were republics, and pretty much both actually adored each other. The thing is though, both Rome and Carthage kind of had ambitions for themselves, not just in the Mediterranean, but as well in parts of Europe, and as well parts of Africa. So, what if in this alternate timeline, they actually join forces? In such, when Carthage takes a hold of Messini, Rome would actually expand into its own type of alliances in the said north, mainly with the Celts, in the region of Gaul. This actually did happen in our own timeline, so it wouldn't be too unbelievable. With this, Carthage would slowly expand its own territory within the region of Iberia, very slowly but surely taking control of certain regions. However, in this alternate timeline as well, there would also be a said conflict between Macedonia and Rome. A said conflict like this also happened slightly beforehand with the Pyrrhus Wars, and it did not go so well for the Macedonians. However, Rome as well had many problems to deal with during this time. In fact, in our own timeline, Carthage and Rome actually were fighting against each other. Macedonia was also planning to actually help out Carthage. In fact, this is also another reason why Macedonia was later on beaten back and destroyed by the Romans. So much so, though, we can understand why this can end up leading to the way it does. Rome and Carthage go to war against each other, but in this alternate timeline, not so much. So during the time of the 3rd century BC, we see that the Carthaginians and the Romans start to slowly expand their own republics, and in such, control certain regions, Carthage taking the majority of the control of the western Mediterranean, while Rome is slowly building up its own momentum, taking control of the region of Gaul. In other words, the more Rome would actually expand into the north, the more likely it would expand it into its own colonies, or as well even make them as their major allies. So much so that 1, this could actually lead to major wars with the Macedonians. And in such, Macedonia was a major threat to the Romans. In fact, many Romans actually were worried that Macedonia would return. So, in this alternate timeline, they might have actually done so. In fact, as I stated before, when Carthage and fighting one another, there were a couple accounts of Macedonians also fighting, and as well on the side of the Carthaginians. Possibly as mercenaries, or something else. But we can understand what actually happened. Rome ended up beating them back. So in this alternate timeline, instead of Rome conquering Carthage, it conquers Macedonia. And all the while, Rome is actually fighting against the Macedonians, Carthage is slowly expanding its territory in North Africa and as well along the region of Iberia, slowly conquering and slowly holding on to it as much as they can. By the end of the 3rd century BC, we probably see the end of the Macedonian Empire, and in such we see something else in general. The Seleucids would probably also expand themselves into the region of the Balkans, but I can't be too sure of whether or not that could actually happen. Either way, we can understand what could end up happening from this. Macedonia is conquered by the Romans, while in such, Carthage is still around. All in all, because of this major expansion, Rome actually feels stronger than it ever has before, expanding even further, even into the lands of Crete, and even further making colonies in the region of Gaul. And in such, the Seleucid Wars might even spark off as well, leading to a further expansion and territorial grab into the region of Anatolia by the Romans. All the while, Carthage is also expanding even further along the said coasts of Africa, and as well even a couple of island hopping, along with the said conquering of regions, possibly in the region of Iberia. However, maybe in this alternate timeline, we could even see probably something like that of a said conquest of Gaul. In fact, during the time of the 2nd century BC, it is actually indicated that Rome ended up having to deal with certain Gallic raids into the region of their territory. Now, in our own timeline, these were a small matter at hand, but in this alternate timeline, it could be something else entirely. In fact, the family of Scipio could probably conquer the region, kind of identical to how Julius Caesar did. For example, just like Julius Caesar, the Scipio family could probably view it as a chance to expand Rome without any type of need of the Senate knowing. In other words, expand the Republic in order to save the Republic. In fact, there are accounts that even many Roman generals actually did this in order to actually seek fame and fortune, just like Julius Caesar. In fact, in our own timeline, we even see this account actually start a war between Rome and a groups of Germanic tribes, such as the Cambrian Teutones. This ended up making Rome actually look like traitors. And the fact is, Rome was actually worried they were going to be destroyed. Though in such, it didn't come to that at all. So Rome actually managed to dodge a major bullet. Though in this alternate timeline, Rome would use this as a chance to expand into the region of Gaul. But not just into Gaul, but as well into the region of the Seleucids. So much so that one Anatolia might actually be conquered in our own said timeline, leading to the downfall of the Seleucid Empire, and the rise of the Parthians. All the while, Gaul would slowly be conquered, and as well Crimea and parts of Ukraine would also be taken as well in this process, just like Rome had done in her own timeline. And such, before the 1st century BC, this is what Rome and Carthage would look like. Major expansions of the republics. Carthage conquering and colonizing parts of Africa and as well conquering the whole of Iberia, while still holding on to its islands in the Mediterranean. All the while Rome conquering various territories throughout the region of Gaul, Greece, and as well even Anatolia, all the way leading down to the said Sinai Peninsula, as well into the parts of Crimea. However, during the time of Julius Caesar, we could probably even see that Rome would actually go from, well, its territorial holdings around here in the region of Gaul to probably something a little more like this soon after Julius Caesar invades. Caesar would expand his territorial expansion and pretty much conquer most of Germania. In fact, by the 1st century AD, this is what Rome would look like by this time. Rome would be expanded even further than it ever would be. In fact, by the 1st and 2nd century AD, Rome could actually expand even further than it had ever done. In such, Rome holds on to Germania as well parts of Britain. Now, I don't know if Rome could actually expand into Caledonia, but I don't think in the highest idealism that would be ever a good idea. Because one, even in our own timeline, Rome felt it too dangerous and as well too far away. Plus, the expansion of the empire itself could easily be a major problem. So much so, I believe Rome would mostly expand itself to the east, rather than itself to the north. However, something does come in this timeline as well, the 3rd century crisis. Rome would still divide itself into its form like as we see here, and pretty much you guessed it, the Punic Empire and a mix between a Celtic Germanic Empire facing off against Rome. Rome will still actually conquer these regions again, and as well expand its territory. But because of its expansion, it becomes way too big. So much so that Rome would have to actually divide itself into the Tripartite Pact. Something with the region of Anatolia, Egypt, and as well the Balkans and parts of Europe, as you see here. Though, as we all know in history, Rome would slowly actually be reunited by the rule of Constantine. Constantine will rule it, and as well later on after him, he will be divided again between Anatolia and Europe. However, if we all know the history, by the time of the fall of the Western Roman Empire, this is what Europe would actually look like, fragmented and divided, by the Saxon and Briton kingdoms in the region of Britannia, while the Franks control northern Europe, as well the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, and various other kingdoms like the Vandals, all control various regions completely different compared to our own timeline. In other words, without Rome actually defeating Carthage, it's highly believable that Iberia, as well even the region of Carthage, might never be conquered by the Goths, or as well even the Vandals, because they're actually grown stronger and richer because of the mercenaries that they can easily afford due to their trade routes. So much so that it is highly believable that Carthage could actually become a little more powerful in this alternate timeline. However, around the time of the 6th and 7th century AD, we can even see the rise of the Eastern Roman Empire reconquering its lost territory in the region of Italy, possibly because of the Visigoths, Ostrogoths, or who knows which other tribe could end up conquering the region. I'll let anybody's ideas of which tribe could end up conquering where, because honestly, I myself am a little confused of which kingdom could end up being where it could be. My best bet, the Franks could end up being what we understand as modern-day Germany, as well as Gaul could end up being conquered by the Goths. Honestly, I don't even know where I could even start. But as well, with Belisarius, Rome could actually expand even further into the Parthian Empire. A lot more stronger and a lot more harder to beat now. However, that all changes with the rise of Islam. Islam still rises as it does in our own timeline, conquering and as well holding on to various areas along the said Eastern Roman Empire. And in such, this could end up seeing the conquest of Egypt as well as parts of Anatolia in the Middle East. However, there is one major problem. Carthage. Carthage is, as I said, stronger now. And last time I checked, it is very impossible to actually cross the desert unless you actually want to die from dehydration. So much so, Carthage's navy would end up sending mercenaries across the ocean, slowly conquering and retaking the region of Egypt. Rome sees its opening, and later reconquers the region, later leading it to what you would call a civilized peace between Rome and Carthage. Carthage holding on to some variation of holdings of lands and territories. All the while, Islam is forced to the far south, pretty much keeping it far back enough that it would slowly actually be pushed back entirely. By the time of World War I, this is our alternate timeline. Honestly, we can end up seeing the said Eastern Roman Empire, or as many call it, the Byzantines, taking part as the, Ottoman Empire, while Carthage still holds on to its territories in Iberia, as well as the Western Mediterranean, and parts of Africa. And as well with Germany, instead of speaking, German, could actually speak, French, for all we know. As well, Austria-Hungary probably still the same way with Bulgaria and Russia and various other regions. So much so, I don't know what Europe could look like, but this is my best outcome, what it could end up seem like. Let me know down in the comments below of what you think would end up happening in this alternate timeline. I'd like to hear your thoughts down below. Anyways guys, it's been Celtic Templar. Hope to see y'all in the next one. Have a great day.